Hello and welcome to the Oklahoma Assembly. My name is Bart Drager with the Education Committee, and this will be Part 1, Our Lawful American Government from 1776 to 1861. Sources will include You Know Something is Wrong When An American Affidavit of Probable Cause by Anna von Reitz, America, Some Assembly Required, Disclosure 101, What You Need to Know, Excellence of the Common Law by Brent Allen Winters, Law of Nations, Establishing the Reign of Natural Liberty, a Common Law Training Manual, They Be Pirates, Matey, The American Admiralty, Its Jurisdiction and Practice by Erastus C. Benedict, and The Sovereign's Way. And here are additional online sources. Here are the presentation sections. Part 1, Our Incorporated American Government, 1776 to 1861. Part 2, What Went Wrong, 1861 to Present. And Part 3, What Are We Doing About It? We'll start off with the 5 main jurisdictions: the air jurisdiction, the national soil jurisdiction, and the international land jurisdiction, and maritime and admiralty. And here are the flags for those jurisdictions. You have the American Civil Peacetime flag for the land and soil jurisdiction, and then our American Title IV war flag for the maritime jurisdiction, and the American war flag for the Navy. Collectively, we just call it the land and soil because they're so closely related with one another. And then the maritime and admiralty are just considered the sea jurisdiction, which is generally speaking having to do with ships and shipping. Again, here's the national soil jurisdiction, the international land jurisdiction, maritime, admiralty. And then on the land and soil jurisdiction, you have common law, and then you have trade between men and women, and crime is harm or deprivation of rights and property, and natural fundamental rights are intrinsic and reserved or waived. In the air jurisdiction, canon law is ecclesiastical, and it abides by the golden rule. Maritime is concerned with equity, and commerce, commercial contracts, and business between legal entities. In this jurisdiction, there are no fundamental rights, but rather civil rights, which are conditions of the contract or granted as privileges, and we'll get to that later. Again, here are the flags for those respective jurisdictions. And then you have the land and soil jurisdiction, and the sea jurisdiction, and the air jurisdiction. Questions to keep in mind: what is common law? When learning about common law, a distinction must be made between the different jurisdictions of law, global air, international sea, maritime, admiralty, international land, and national soil. All courts are operating in a subset of one of these jurisdictions. The air and the sea jurisdictions have their own kinds of common law, and it has nothing to do with the land and soil jurisdiction. There is a difference between American common law and British common law, and maritime commercial common law and martial common law. In the sea and air jurisdictions, those species of common law are connected to case precedent and depend upon the decisions of prior higher courts to inform their decision in the present. On the land and soil jurisdiction, common law is that body of law that has become common to us, particular to the land and soil jurisdiction, and it does not rely on case precedent. In American common law, the definition of a crime is harm to an actual man or woman, or someone being deprived of a right or property. That is the only definition of a crime in common law on the land and soil jurisdiction. And here's a different view of the 5 main jurisdictions just to give an idea of scale. First, you have the national soil jurisdiction, which is 6 inches deep. And then the maritime and admiralty, which make up the sea jurisdiction. Then the global air jurisdiction and the international land jurisdiction. To put this in perspective, the global air jurisdiction is 62 miles high to the Kármán line, and the average depth of the sea jurisdiction is 2.3 miles. And then the international land jurisdiction is 3,960 miles to the center of the earth. The global air jurisdiction is 27 times deeper than the sea, and the international land jurisdiction is 64 times deeper than the air jurisdiction. Why are Americans sovereign in their own right? And these are some questions to keep in mind. What does it mean to be sovereign in your own right? Why are Americans sovereign? it can be helpful to revise our thinking of sovereignty as it pertains to the European kings and the emperors of old who had subjects and kingdoms. Sovereignty means free and independent and subject to no one. The reason the Babylonians and Romans had emperors is because men were willing to abdicate their own freedom and independence because they believed they needed a king to protect them. It was motivated by perceived safety. Americans are kings without subjects. Americans do not rule over each other, but are joint tenants in the sovereignty. William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy, also called William the Bastard, conquered England and became the first Norman king of England in 1066. Upon his death in 1087, William disinherited his sons and declared his loyal French barons to be sovereign in their own right. At the conclusion of the American Revolutionary War, Marquis de Lafayette is credited with suggesting the same solution for Americans. William Belcher, the progeny of a French baron declared sovereign in 1066, and a commander in the American Continental Army, then declared his soldiers and every American born on the land and soil of America to be sovereign in their own right. Nations being composed of men naturally free and independent, who before the establishment of civil societies lived together in the state of nature. Nations or sovereign states are to be considered as so many free persons living together in the state of nature. It is a settled point with writers on the natural law that all men inherit from nature a perfect liberty and independence, of which they cannot be deprived without their own consent. Law of Nations, 1758. Nations being free and independent of each other, in the same manner as men are naturally free and independent. Law of Nations. Since men are naturally equal and a perfect equality prevails in their rights and obligations as equally proceeding from nature, nations composed of men and considered as so many free persons living together in a state of nature are naturally equal and inherit from nature the same obligations and rights. Power or weakness does not in this respect produce any difference. A dwarf is as much a man as a giant. A small republic is no less a sovereign state than the most powerful kingdom. A nation or a state is, as has been said at the beginning of this work, a body politic, or a society of men united together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by their combined strength. Every nation that governs itself under what form soever, without dependence on any foreign power, is a sovereign state. Its rights are naturally the same as those of any other state. Such are the moral persons who live together in a natural society, subject to the law of nations. To give a nation a right to make an immediate figure in this grand society, it is sufficient that it be really sovereign and independent, that is, that it govern itself by its own authority and laws. Finally, several sovereign and independent states may unite themselves together by a perpetual confederacy without ceasing to be each individually a perfect state. They will together constitute a federal republic. Their joint deliberations will not impair the sovereignty of each member, though they may, in certain respects, put some restraint on the exercise of it in virtue of voluntary engagements. A person does not cease to be free and independent when he is obliged to fulfill engagements which he has voluntarily contracted. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. Grisham versus Georgia. Additional questions to keep in mind. Why is the United States of America regarded as sovereign, free, and independent? What is the difference between the United States and the United States of America?